The murmur of conversation at my parents' table wound through the evening Nairobi breeze. My father's house brought people together, cousins, aunties, uncles in crisp kitenge, neighbors who'd known me from childhood. The table overflowed with ugali, sukuma wiki, beef stew, mango slices, and I would have inhaled the nostalgia, except for the tension simmering beneath every paused fork. My Uncle Charles filled his glass. Across from me, my mother offered more chapati that I didn't want. My cousin Wambui, visiting from Mombasa, scrolled her phone under the table. I shifted, cold sweat gathering under my shirt as my father's voice broke through yet another lull. "So, Eric, tell us again," he said, tone balanced between politeness and sarcasm only the way a father can. "What is this company you keep talking about?" I squeezed my napkin, fighting the urge to laugh or bolt. The idea of this moment replayed endlessly in my nightmares, now drained of imagination and bloomed in aching reality. "It's called AeroSync," I said, forcing steady breath. "We automate logistics for small vendors. Through SMS and a web dashboard, inventory, deliveries, payments, you can track and forecast sales in real time." Auntie Barbara sniffed gently, the scent of cardamom on her dress dull compared to the sharpness of her words. "But who is going to use that? Your father's duca barely gets by with a mobilized phone. Those people want cash, Eric." I tried, but my voice tumbled under the clang of my cousin's laughter. "Let him finish," my younger sister Alice said, poking her fork into the salad. Everyone fell silent. My father folded his hands. "Son, you have the degree. You could get a proper job in a bank, KCB, equity. What is wrong with stability, with respectability?" I thought foolishly they might give me a chance to explain. Instead, Uncle Charles leaned over, his jacket brushing the arm of the upholstered chair. "I'm just saying, Eric, we expected better. All this software business, it's for Wazungu, not us, be practical." Each word sank inside me, cold and leaden. My chest ached strangely, a mix of grief for the lost approval and a sharp, sudden clarity. These were my people, my home, and yet this was not my place, not tonight and maybe not again, at least not for a long time. The distance between us pressed in with every polite smile, every sidelong glance. I let the silence swallow my reply. Dinner ended with the scraping of chairs and half-hearted laughing, as if everyone was suddenly eager to redirect the conversation elsewhere. I excused myself, drifted into the dim hallway and outside to the veranda where the city lights blinked and the night air pricked my skin. It took everything in me not to cry, out of anger, embarrassment, but mostly out of loss. As I walked home through the familiar back streets, the conversations from my youth floated up again. Brave talk about the future, always papered over by the real weight of expectation. I had failed them by not choosing safety. I had failed myself by wanting more. The next weeks blurred into one: rejection, late nights framed by buzzing street lamps, the clock perpetually flashing past 2 a.m. My co-founder, Agnes, worked round the clock out of a cramped Westlands office where the ink never dried and internet cut out every few hours. She'd grown up in Kisii, sent home what she could, and believed with an urgency that sometimes frightened me. We failed over and over. I pitched a room of investors with laptops and cold eyes, only to leave with dry mouths and a single business card, always the same refrain: "The market's not here yet." The only local clients, struggling kiosk owners and nixtamel millers, told us they didn't have time for computers. Their own children sold airtime from battered second-hand phones. Our tiny product struggled to breathe. On the worst nights, Agnes would fall asleep at her desk, and I would fiddle with the code, debugging through heartbreak and the scent of frying nyama choma out in the street. Rent was late. I sold my old phone, then my bicycle. Arguments with my parents stretched thin over WhatsApp, then faded. 2 months passed without a call from home. The city shrank to a corridor between the Matatu stage, our office, and the cheap supermarket that sometimes had moldy vegetables. The grief of their rejection became armor, each raw nerve gradually sheathed in numbness. In my mind, I rebuilt my family dinner, every doubting word a spark that fueled my work. I told myself if I could just make this idea real, the laughter and muttered comments would fall away. Still, it was empty. Even the small wins felt hollow without someone to call, someone to believe. We barely crawled through that first year. Agnes and I ate lunch standing up, combing through code on battered laptops as boda bodas roared below the window. We haunted tech meetups, begged entrepreneurs for mentorship, and worked for free in exchange for introductions. There were days we paid our loan developer Njoroj with takeaway mandazi and coffee instead of cash. Shame bit every time I checked my bank balance. The breakthrough when it came was quiet. A small logistics cooperative outside Kiambu needed inventory to track rural suppliers. They'd heard of our system third or fourth hand and wanted a demo, not later but now. By 9 the next morning, we were in a tin-roofed office with a generator coughing in the background. I remember holding my breath as Agnes demonstrated the dashboard, how the numbers updated live with each delivery, how SMS reached even the most battered phones. The cooperative's chairwoman tapped her mobile absently, then looked up. "This will work, how much per month?" My voice almost failed me, but the joy was sharper than the fear. We signed our first real client on a Friday, and I rushed outside, Agnes beside me, both of us blinded by the sunlight and the sudden truth of it. Someone believed. With that pilot, more inquiries came. Word trickled into circles we'd never imagined. Other cooperatives called, unable to believe software could work for them. The market was there, hidden beneath the stubborn idea that only those with privilege could innovate. We grew slowly but surely until our shoestring budget stretched just enough to pay late rent and settle debts. 2 years rolled by. The name AeroSync spread through towns and cities, Mombasa, Kisumu, then beyond. Our platform found its way into dusty hardware stores and crowded matatus, into the hands of people who'd never imagined software could be for them. But the city remembered who I was. Nairobi has a way of shrinking in on itself, the world's largest village. Once, in a crowded cafe, I saw my father buying airtime with another businessman. He looked right through me, a glimmer of shock registering before he nodded a distant greeting. At night, I keyed in numbers, watching dashboards bloom with new users in places I'd never been. The company acquired seed funding. One day, we closed a major partnership with a bank, payment processing directly through our app. For the first time, I paid myself a salary. I sent money back home without a word. Not until the emails started trickling in did I reckon with the past. My cousin Wambui forwarded a blog post to the family group chat. Young Kenyan founders disrupt rural commerce. I ignored the ping, heart pounding. Then, weeks later, my sister Alice called at midnight. Mum asked if we could see you for dinner. Dad too, her voice was gentle but underlined with some relief I recognized. Please come, you can bring your friend if you want. The city, for all its distance, had circled back around. The night before I returned, sleep kept its distance. I walked the apartment, running my hand over doorknobs, windows, the small kitchen that now felt temporary. In the hush, I let myself remember that old dinner, the burn of disappointment, the hunger for approval, the pain of feeling unworthy in the eyes of the people who had raised me. It lingered still, but no longer rooted me. When I pulled up outside my parents' compound the next evening, the street was alive. The neighbors, teenagers squeezing through the front gate, my father standing on the porch, white shirt untucked. My mother waited by his side, her kitenge bright with new colors. The house felt smaller, familiar, but less confining now. Dinner unfolded quietly, the banter restrained but also warmer. My father asked how my journey had been. My mother complimented Agnes on her dress. The words I'd prepared died in my throat, speeches of vindication shriveled among the diplomatic small talk. There was no hostility, only something like wary curiosity. After chapati had been cleared, my father led us to the sitting room. On the table sat a battered laptop, the type he used mostly for YouTube gospel and Excel spreadsheets. Your mother said I should. Well, I want to see this, Eric. Show me what you do. The room crowded in uncles, cousins. Agnes unfolded her screen, fingers trembling only slightly as she logged in. I clicked into our dashboard showing live transactions, names from across the country, each sale pinging quietly in the corner. My father leaned in. Is this in real time? Yes, I said. Each vendor here, look, this one is in Eldoret, they just updated stock. Uncle Charles crossed his arms, peering at the graph. My mother came around to stand by my side, her hand trembling above my shoulder. Agnes flipped open a folder, pulling out the partnership letter with one of Kenya's oldest banks, logo stamped in dark blue. My father's mouth opened, searched for words. This is legitimate, he said quietly. I nodded, letting the moment settle. We demonstrated the SMS feature. My mother, at Agnes' urging, sent a stock update from her ancient Nokia. The system responded in seconds. She let out a small, surprised laugh, mouth open, and everyone turned. People who hadn't spoken to me in years touched the screen, asking questions. How did it work? Who else used it? How did we protect user data? Each answer I gave with calm, measured pride, my old shame burning away under the soft, awed light of their attention. For a long while nobody spoke. At last my father reached over, patting my shoulder. "I didn't understand before," he said. "I thought you wanted to be different to embarrass us. I see now you wanted more, and you did it in your own way." Agnes glanced at me, and I felt the old, tight ache in my chest loosen. That night, once the family had dispersed, aunties calling out blessings, cousins asking if there were jobs at AeroSync, I found myself alone with my father in the sitting room. The ghost of that old dinner lingered between us, but less painful now, a worn photograph instead of an open wound. He cleared his throat. "Why didn't you tell us about the struggles? I thought maybe you just didn't want us to worry." I stared at my hands, then met his gaze with something like understanding. "I did want you to worry, I wanted you to believe. But sometimes belief doesn't come until after the evidence." He nodded, and I saw the lines in his face deepen, a mixture of pride and regret. "Next time," he said, standing to leave, "tell me sooner." I smiled, and this time it didn't feel forced. Returning to the city, everything felt changed, even if nothing practical had shifted. Our office still rattled in the wind, taxi drivers still tried to cheat me, the price of Sukuma had doubled. But I walked the streets with a lighter step. Here was my place, forged in rejection, loss, and dogged hope. I visited clients in towns I'd once only seen from the windows of crowded buses. They told me how AeroSync saved them time, how their families ate better now, how their children dreamed of university. Sometimes one would even mention reading about us in the newspaper, pride sparking in their eyes. Yet whenever the product faltered or doubt crept back, I'd recall that old dinner, how the hurt became the wellspring for something lasting. Rejection did not define me. Return with the proof of what I had built made me whole again. One Tuesday, my mother called unannounced. She'd convinced the cooperative in her church to try AeroSync. "I didn't know my friends could use software," she confessed, sheepish. The circle was closed, but the ache remained, a bittersweet memory of an old grief now shaped into something useful. My success did not erase the past, but it illuminated its purpose. That clarity, hard-won and fragile, remained with me, not as armor but as proof of what could endure and what could return home, changed and perhaps finally understood.